3,000 years ago, in a walled village hidden in the desert cliffs of Luxor, a group of workers did something no one in recorded history had ever done before. They stopped working. This isn't a story about pharaohs or pyramids. It's a story about the people the history books usually leave out. The painters, sculptors, and stonecutters who built Egypt's greatest tombs, and who left behind the most detailed record of ordinary life anywhere in the ancient world. The village was called Set Mat, the place of truth. Today we know it as Deir el-Medina. It sat on the west bank of the Nile, just across from Luxor, a short walk from the Valley of the Kings, close enough to work, far enough to keep a secret. For nearly 5 centuries, from the height of the New Kingdom, this village housed the men who carved and painted the tombs of Egypt's kings. These weren't the anonymous laborers who hauled stone blocks for the pyramids centuries earlier. These were specialists, master painters, draftsmen, sculptors, and carpenters, sworn to secrecy because they knew exactly where the kings would be buried. Because of that secrecy, they were sequestered away from the rest of Egypt, living and working inside a walled compound built just for them. And in exchange for their silence and their skill, the state gave them a life most ordinary Egyptians could only dream of.
The government provided their housing. It provided medical care. It even provided laundry service. Wages came in the form of grain, beer, and firewood, with occasional bonuses for religious festivals, and materials set aside for their own eventual mummification. Painters, sculptors, and carpenters were paid roughly 3 times what a simple field hand earned. This was, by ancient standards, a genuinely privileged life. Their schedule looked strikingly familiar: 8 days on the job, 2 days off, with extra rest granted for festivals, illness, or on at least one recorded occasion, simply being drunk. But those 2 days off weren't spent resting. The workers used them to build tombs and chapels for themselves. The private tombs they built for their own families were nothing like the dark, imposing tombs of kings. They were vibrant, personal, and full of life. Scenes on these walls show the tomb owners farming in the afterlife, sharing family feasts, and playing board games, a vision of eternity built around ordinary joys. These weren't people who saw themselves as lesser artists doing lesser work. They understood the same theology and used the same techniques as the royal tombs they spent their working lives building. What makes Deir el-Medina truly remarkable isn't gold or treasure, it's paper, or rather broken pieces of pottery and limestone called ostraca. Archaeologists have recovered more than 10,000 of these fragments here, along with dozens of papyri, legal disputes, private letters, sick day records, religious texts.
More written material than any other site in ancient Egypt. For the first time, ancient Egyptians stop looking like distant statues and start looking like real people, with grudges, humor, and bad days. But this remarkable life had one fragile foundation. The state had to actually pay them, on time, every time. In the 29th year of the reign of Ramesses III, that foundation cracked. Egypt was under strain. Invasions from the Sea Peoples and pressure on the harvests were making it harder for the state to meet its obligations to its own people. The wage rations that were supposed to arrive for the tomb workers simply didn't come. And then they didn't come again. 18 days into the delay, the workers had had enough. They walked past the necropolis guard posts and said the words a scribe named Amenacht would write down for history: "We are hungry." They didn't return to work. Instead, they sat down at the rear of a royal mortuary temple and refused to move. Officials rushed out and ordered them back to their posts. The workers refused and spent the night camped in the sacred grounds of the necropolis itself. 2 days later, they marched again, this time to the mortuary temple of Ramesses II, going so far as to enter its interior in open defiance of tradition. It was a sacred trespass, and yet no one stopped them by force. This wasn't chaos. It was the first known labor strike in recorded human history, nearly 3,000 years before the modern labor movement would ever use the word. The scribe Amenacht recorded it all on a papyrus scroll, now known as the Turin Strike Papyrus, kept today in a museum in Italy. A 5-day protest preserved almost by accident that rewrote what we thought we knew about ancient workers. Deir el-Medina eventually faded from use and was lost to memory for centuries, rediscovered only in the last 100 years, first by Italian excavators, then by French archaeologists, who spent decades carefully uncovering its homes, chapels, and rubbish heaps. What they found wasn't a monument built to impress the gods. It was a home, built by ordinary, skilled people who once stood up and said their work deserved to be paid. The pyramids and the pharaohs get remembered.
But it was people like these, hungry, defiant, and unafraid, who actually built the legacy we still marvel at today.